My granddaughter called me in the middle of the night. "Grandma, I'm at the police station. My stepfather hit me, but now he says I was the one who attacked him. They don't believe me." When I arrived at the police station, the desk officer went pale and stammered. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." But before continuing, check if you've already subscribed to the channel and share in the comments where you are watching us from. We would love to know how far our revenge stories travel. At around 2 o'clock in the morning, my sleep was shattered by the insistent sound of the phone. The shrill ringtone echoed from the nightstand. I started. I reached out and turned on the lamp. The yellowish light illuminated the screen, and the words I saw chilled me to the bone. "My love, Emily." A shiver ran down my spine. She never calls at this hour. With trembling hands, I slid my finger to answer. "Emily, what is it, honey?" I tried to keep my voice calm. From the other side, I didn't hear her usual cheerful voice, but a choked, desperate sob, distorted by the echo of a large place, maybe a lobby or a public hallway. "Grandma," her voice trembled, cut off by sobs. I'm at the police station." Every word was like a blow to my head. The police station. Why was she there? "My stepfather touched me." Emily burst into tears, trying to explain between gasps. "I only defended myself, but now he says I attacked him. They believe him, Grandma. They don't believe me." A mixture of rage and fear surged through my body. Robert, that man. I always knew there was something wrong with him. At that moment, I heard a rough, masculine voice near her giving orders. "Miss, you cannot use the phone." "Grandma, save me!" Those were the last words I heard before a dry beep cut off the call. "Emily! Emily!" I yelled into the dead phone, but only silence answered me. Without thinking for a second, I jumped out of bed, my hands clumsy, my head spinning. I grabbed the heavy coat hanging on the chair and ran to the kitchen. I left the house almost without closing the iron gate behind me. The old engine roared with a groan before launching into the freezing darkness. The scene at the police station was painfully familiar. I have spent half my life in places like this, but never as the relative of a suspect. The cold, fluorescent lights, the smell of old coffee mixed with paper and disinfectant. The desk officer was a young man with a tired, inexperienced face. He looked up and asked mechanically, "How can I help you, ma'am?" I had no time for formalities. I put my hands on the counter, looked him in the eye, and spoke with the firmness of someone who is used to giving orders. "I am Elizabeth Miller, and I'm here to see my granddaughter, Emily Taylor." Just then, a man in uniform emerged from the inner hallway. I recognized him immediately, Detective Michael Brooks. When I was still on the force, he was just a rookie patrolman who looked at me with a mixture of respect and admiration. Seeing me, Michael stopped. His professional expression broke into surprise and immediately into discomfort. "Detective Miller, I didn't expect to see you here. Your granddaughter is the young woman they just brought in." I wasn't in the mood for courtesies. My heart felt like it was burning. My voice hardened, cold and precise, like when I used to interrogate criminals. "Where is Emily, Brooks?" He hesitated at my tone, swallowed, and pointed toward 2 rooms across from us. My stomach clenched as I looked. 2 cruelly opposite scenes. Through the glass of interrogation room number 1, I saw my little angel. Emily was huddled on a metal chair, small and lost. Her slender hands were handcuffed on the table. Under the white light, I could see her cheek was swollen, reddened, with a scratch running down to her chin. Her eyes were wide, empty, filled with fear and despair. Rage and pain climbed into my throat, but my gaze shifted to the room next door. There, several paramedics surrounded Robert. That monster, sitting comfortably, his shoulder bandaged with white gauze, barely a scratch. He was talking non-stop with another officer, with the false voice of a wounded victim, playing the perfectly concerned father. I got close enough to hear his words. "The girl hasn't been well lately, sir. It must be the pressure of college applications. I only tried to enter the room to calm her down. I was afraid she would do something crazy and hurt herself. Who would have imagined that the girl would go wild, grab something sharp off the desk, and stab me?" I stared at the man through the glass. In his eyes, there was no fear or pain, nothing that resembled someone who had just been attacked. Robert was completely calm, calculating, and when he shot a quick glance toward the room where Emily was, I saw a flash of repulsive satisfaction in his eyes. For an instant, the grandmother in me stepped aside and gave way to the veteran investigator. Every detail, every gesture, every clumsy lie of his screamed in my head. The instinct of someone who has spent a lifetime facing crime and deception yelled one truth. He was lying. The slap marked on Emily's swollen cheek was like a spreading ink stain, dragging a current of memories I had tried to bury for years. Memories of a family that was once whole, happy. I thought of Sarah, my only daughter, who used to have a smile so bright it could light up an entire room. And I thought of Jack, her husband, Emily's father. He was not a fancy man. Jack was a construction worker with hands rough and hardened by cement and steel, but those same hands were incredibly gentle when they held his daughter's tiny hand. I remember perfectly how he would come home every afternoon, clothes covered in dust, exhausted after a long day of work, but never losing his smile for his wife and daughter. He would lift Emily into his arms, let her snuggle against his neck, and laugh heartily, regardless of the white dust sticking to his shirt. But a call from the job site erased all those smiles. A scaffolding accident, brief, cold, and cruel. Jack never came home. From that day on, Sarah's house fell into a terrifying silence. My daughter, once strong and cheerful, threw herself into working at a marketing firm like a moth to a flame. She left early, came back late, lost herself among campaigns and numbers, as if trying to flee the pain and the emptiness that Jack had left in every corner of the house. Emily was too young to understand the loss, and little by little, she became a shadow in her own home. I visited often. I cooked her favorite dishes, like roast turkey and mashed potatoes. I cleaned. I tried to fill that enormous void with my presence. But I knew I could never replace a father figure. 2 years after the tragedy, Sarah brought Robert home to introduce him. He was a financial advisor, totally different from Jack. He wore expensive suits, spoke fluently, and always showed an elegant confidence. At the first dinner at my house, he brought a bottle of California Cabernet, kept saying my meatloaf was better than any restaurant, and kindly asked Emily how her pre-calculus class was going. He put on a perfect performance, a successful man, desperately in love with Sarah, treating her daughter as if she were his own. Sarah, exhausted and craving support after so much suffering, soon fell into the sweet trap. She looked at him with hope, convinced she had found a lifeline. But I didn't. My old lady's intuition, or maybe my cop's instinct, told me something didn't fit. His smile was beautiful, but it never reached his eyes. In those eyes, there was always coldness and calculation. I noticed that in moments when he thought no one was watching, his gaze would slide toward Emily, who was just entering adolescence, and it wasn't the look of a stepfather. He had that strange, evaluating look, like a hunter observing his prey. One time, I couldn't contain myself anymore. I waited until it was just the two of us and said calmly, "Sarah, you should look into him better." Sarah immediately became defensive. She cut me off right away with a hurt and annoyed tone. "Mom, don't be judgmental. He's very good to me and to Emily. Don't you want me to be happy?" That question was like a stab to my heart. I kept quiet. I feared that if I insisted, I would end up pushing my daughter away, and with that, I would lose the opportunity to protect my granddaughter. My fear was not unfounded. Emily was 13 then, and every weekend she insisted on sleeping over at my house. One Saturday night, while we were baking chocolate chip cookies together, and the smell of cinnamon and vanilla filled the kitchen, she suddenly stopped and whispered softly, "Grandma, I don't like the way my stepfather looks at me." My heart stopped for an instant. I knelt beside her, trying to keep my voice calm. "What do you mean, honey?" She looked down at the floor. "When Mom isn't here, he looks at me a lot. Once, when I put on the short dress Mum bought me, he looked at my legs and made some really weird jokes. I'm scared." I felt a chill in my chest. Her small body trembled in my arms. The rage and helplessness rose to my throat. I could only tell her the little that was in my power: to always lock her bedroom door, to call me immediately if anything strange happened, and to find any excuse to come to my house as often as she could. 5 years have passed since that night. 5 years of living with anxiety, with the guilt of not having done more. I fooled myself into thinking that maybe it was just the sensitivity of a teenager, that my fear was exaggerated, that I was seeing ghosts. I prayed I was wrong. But Robert's arrogant look, crossing the glass, brought me back to reality like a knife thrust. A cold fury tightened my chest, but the years of work had taught me to convert rage into a precise weapon. I took a deep breath, cleared the image of my granddaughter from my mind, and put on the armor of former detective Elizabeth Miller. I turned and walked straight toward Michael Brooks. My voice no longer had the gentle tone of an old acquaintance, only the firmness of a superior questioning her subordinate. "Detective," I emphasized his rank, "I demand to speak to my granddaughter alone. Right now. It's her right, and you know it." Michael looked uncomfortable. He glanced toward the room next door, where a paramedic was tending to Robert, "Ms. Miller, the protocol." He started to stammer, repeating the same rules I myself had taught him years ago. "I know the protocol better than you, Brooks." I interrupted him, looking at him with cutting coldness. "Do you know who I am? Don't make me remind you. Give me 5 minutes." The weight of my name was still enough. Michael swallowed, nervous. Finally, he nodded with some resignation and instructed a young police officer to open the door to the interrogation room. The metal door opened with a screech, revealing a cold, cruel space. The only sound was the monotonous hum of the fluorescent tube on the ceiling. Emily lifted her head when she saw me enter. Her eyes were swollen, red, filled with a desperation so deep it broke my heart. "Grandma," she sobbed, barely a broken whisper. When she moved slightly, the handcuffs hit the edge of the metal table with a sharp, humiliating clang. I turned to the young officer. "Unlock one of those handcuffs," I ordered. He hesitated, looking outside, seeking approval from Michael. I didn't wait. "Didn't you hear me? The girl is not a dangerous criminal." He finally obeyed. The click of the lock sounded like a small relief. I sat across from Emily, took her freezing hand, the marks of the metal still visible. "It's all right, my love. I'm here now." I told her tenderly but firmly. "Now take a deep breath. That's it. Tell me everything. Every detail. Leaving nothing out. She needs to know everything." Under the cold, white light, Emily began to recount her nightmare. Her voice trembled, sometimes breaking with sobs. Her mother, Sarah, was away on a business trip to Denver. Only the two of them were left in the house. That night, around 11 o'clock, the girl was getting ready for bed when she heard Robert's car arrive, then the clumsy, heavy steps coming up the stairs. He reeked of alcohol. He knocked on her bedroom door. Emily didn't want to open it, but he pretended to be interested in a college project. The door was only slightly ajar. He slipped in, and immediately the dry thud of the latch closing was heard. "He got close to me," Emily murmured, her gaze lost in some point of the void. His voice sounded sickly sweet. "You look very pretty lately, very much a woman. I just want to hug you for a bit." The girl backed up until she hit the edge of the desk. "You're drunk. Please leave." He didn't listen to me. He lunged at me and grabbed my arm. I defended myself. I screamed and he slapped me. Her voice broke. It sounded loud, dry. My ear rang. He pushed me against the desk chair, and his other hand started touching me. Tears burned in my eyes, but I swallowed them. This was no time for weakness. In the middle of the panic, the girl continued recounting. "I managed to see the metal compass I use for drafting on the table. I didn't think at all. I just grabbed it with all the strength I had and stabbed him in the shoulder. He screamed in pain and stumbled toward the bed. Taking advantage of that instant, Emily ran out, down the hall, and still in shock, dialed 911. As she finished telling me, I felt my chest tighten until it hurt. I forced myself to remain calm. I looked her straight in the eyes and asked a key question. "Emily, when he attacked you, was the door open or closed?" She sobbed, trying to remember. "When?" "When he entered, it was ajar, but right away, he pushed it and locked it. I heard the click of the latch." That answer sank my heart. His version said he was outside. Hers said he had come in and locked the door, word against word. But a spark of hope ignited in my mind, a detail that I myself had planned. The security camera. Months ago, I had advised Sarah to install a small camera piece in the upstairs hallway, right in the corner facing Emily's door, to monitor the house when she travelled. That camera. It might have recorded the moment Robert entered the room. I stood up right away, touched my granddaughter's shoulder. "Stay here, I'll be right back." I left and walked straight toward Michael, who was still there looking annoyed. "Brooks, I demand you pull the security camera footage from my daughter's house, right now." Michael frowned, but he couldn't deny such a reasonable request. He led me to the monitoring room. Robert, already tended to by the paramedics, was also called in to compare versions. His face was again showing that repulsive confidence. Michael took longer than usual with the system, murmuring something about connection failures. Finally, the video appeared on the screen. The recording began. The image was a bit distorted, showing the empty hallway. The time was running in the corner. Suddenly, the video shook. In the next scene, Emily's door burst open. She ran out with the bloody compass in her hand and stabbed Robert in the shoulder, who curiously was right in front of the doorway, as if he had just arrived. The entire moment he entered, locked the door, and what happened inside had disappeared. Only the scene where Emily attacked him, for no reason, remained. Robert smiled, a nauseating smile of triumph. He turned to the police officer next to him, spreading his arms like a martyr. "There is the truth. I only approached to ask something, and she attacked me for no reason. I told you so." I kept silent, but my fists inside my coat clenched so hard that my knuckles turned white. A clumsily cut video. An officer with suspicious attitudes. a perfect setup to blame the victim. The recording had been manipulated. I didn't suspect it. I knew it. Robert's smile was pure poison, but also the light that showed me the way. He and Michael believed that this mutilated video was the final point, the irrefutable proof that would bury the truth. But they were wrong. They forgot something. A piece of evidence that is not on a hard drive, that cannot be easily manipulated by dirty fingers. It is stored in the emergency center archives. I turned abruptly toward Michael, with a look devoid of the slightest trace of compassion. Fine, Brooks. The video may have interference, it may be cut, but the audio doesn't. My voice resonated firmly in the suffocating silence of the room. I want to hear the 911 call recording that my niece made. Michael's face showed a flicker of panic, but he immediately covered it with a false appearance of professionalism. Ms. Miller, that requires an official prosecutor's order. The procedure. Don't talk to me about procedures anymore, I growled, taking a step toward him, forcing him to back up. Do you know who I am, Brooks? Do you know who I have contact with? Don't force me to use other methods, the kind that would make you regret coming to work tonight. My direct threat took effect. The weight of the shadow of a former high-ranking detective, Michael's old boss's boss, made him hesitate. He looked at Robert for support, but the other one just lowered his gaze without saying a word. Finally, Michael nodded with annoyance and ordered a technician to extract the recording. The entire room fell silent. Robert crossed his arms, visibly less confident. Emily, who had been taken out of the interrogation room, stood behind me, trembling. The speaker buzzed, and then the calm voice of an operator was heard. 911 emergency, I'm listening. And immediately Emily's voice, broken, desperate, between sobs. Help. Please help me. Someone is attacking me, at number 24 Hickory Street. But that wasn't all. The most important thing was the background sounds, the ones that no trick could generate in the middle of real panic. Very clearly, Robert's voice was heard, somewhat further away, growling with fury like a wounded animal. What are you doing? Let go of that phone right now. Then came the phrase that condemned him, the girl's crying covering even her ragged breathing. No, let go of me. My mother is coming. And Robert's reply, every word spat out between clenched teeth, full of malice and that sick confidence of someone who feels untouchable. Shut up, brat. If you talk, your mother is going to believe you provoked me. Don't forget, she only believes me. The recording ended. The silence that followed weighed like a tombstone. The other police officers looked at each other, uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with Michael. His face was as pale as paper, with sweat beading on his forehead. There it was, the irrefutable proof, the demon's confession. But I underestimated Robert's audacity. He didn't flinch. In seconds, he regained his composure and launched a counter-offensive, as cunning as it was repugnant. That's false, he yelled, pointing at the speaker. It's all false. Do you know that Emily is studying information technology engineering? She is doing a research project on voice artificial intelligence, audio deepfake. She can create any sound, imitate any voice she wants. She clearly prepared this setup to destroy me. His brazenness froze me. He turned to Emily, who remained motionless, wide-eyed, filled with confusion. Say it, Emily. Aren't you working on an audio deepfake project? Tell everyone. Emily stammered, desperate, looking back and forth. Yes, I study that technology. It's part of a class. But I swear I would never do something so dirty. Her innocent confession, although partly true, became a weapon in the hands of the culprit. It planted a seed of doubt in the minds of everyone present, a brilliant technology student, with resentment toward her stepfather. That argument sounded reasonable to those looking for an easy way out. Michael instantly seized the opportunity, as if he had found a board in the middle of a shipwreck. He nodded with a professional air. That's right. This technology is very complex. We cannot consider this valid evidence without a deep analysis by specialists. This will take a long time. I understood immediately. He was buying time, trying to cover for Robert. He was turning the truth into a mess to shut down the case. Just then, the door to the surveillance room burst open. My daughter Sarah rushed in. She looked exhausted, her hair disheveled, and her face haggard with worry after the overnight flight. She had come directly from the airport. Robert, like a first-rate actor, immediately changed his expression. He ran to her, playing the perfect martyr. He hugged her and showed her the bandage on his shoulder. Look, she stabbed me. I swear I just wanted to go in and see how she was doing. I didn't think that... His voice broke, and he left the sentence unfinished. Sarah froze. Her eyes went from her fiancé's pained face to her daughter, trembling with wrists marked by handcuffs, and then to my face, cold as marble. The fatigue of the trip, the emotional shock, and above all, the blind faith she had placed in Robert for so many years, combined to give her a cruel conclusion. She looked at me, and in her eyes, there was no longer worry, but reproach. Then she looked at Emily with an expression I will never forget, a look of pure disappointment. Emily never put up with him, Sarah said, her voice trembling but firm. Mum, what if she really made it all up to ruin my happiness? Emily's choked sob sounded more painful than any scream. She lowered her head, her shoulders shaking. Broken. Completely broken. A mother's knife hurts more than any police accusation or the culprit's lie. I looked at Sarah and felt infinite sadness and rage. She was also a victim of deception. At that moment, I understood it. In that room, I was alone. And the battle to come was not just for justice for my granddaughter, but to recover my daughter, who was blinded by a demon. I didn't say anything to Sarah. Any reproach was useless. I just carefully took Emily, who was already devastated, and led her to the cold bench in the hallway. Stay here with me. Everything is going to be all right, I whispered, though even I didn't know where to begin. I left her sitting and moved away to a corner, my heart heavy as stone. From there, I observed the complete theatre. Michael patted Robert, feigning consolation, but their eyes met with complicity. The other police officers, after seeing the family drama and hearing the AI story, began gathering documents, ready to close the case with the simplest version. A rebellious, unstable teenager who attacked her stepfather. They wanted to finish as quickly as possible. But among all that indifference, there was someone different. A young, slender police officer with a firm gaze was leaning by the water cooler. Her badge read, Lara Jones. She wasn't looking at Michael or Robert. Her eyes were fixed on Emily's huddled figure, with a compassion impossible to hide. I remembered that she was the one who had shaken her head when Robert blurted out that lie about the AI technology. She didn't believe him. In the middle of that swamp of falsehood, she was the only light. I knew she was the one I had to find. I walked toward the cooler slowly, pretending I just wanted a cup of water to calm down. As I passed Lara, I didn't stop. I murmured to her, barely audible, the lighthouse coffee at the end of the street, in 30 minutes, alone. I didn't wait for her answer. I continued to the cooler. I poured water that I didn't plan to drink. In the reflection of the glass, I saw that Lara was startled by the unexpected invitation, but after hesitating for a second, she nodded discreetly. At the lighthouse coffee, at that hour before dawn, There were only a few dozing taxi drivers. I chose the most secluded table and ordered a black coffee, no sugar. The bitter taste helped clear my mind. 10 minutes later, Lara arrived. She was still wearing her full uniform, but she had removed the jacket with the insignia, as if wanting to shed her role slightly. She sat across from me, looking worried and tense. I didn't waste time. Time did not permit it. "You trust my granddaughter, don't you, Officer Jones?" Lara sighed, her restless hands stirring her latte. "Yes, former detective," she admitted. "My gut tells me the girl isn't lying. The way she was scared, the way that Robert set up the show, it's all too obvious. But in our profession, a hunch isn't proof. Everything is against your granddaughter now," she continued, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Detective Brooks has preliminarily concluded that the case is due to Emily having an adolescent psychological disorder and attacking her stepfather in a moment of lost control. He is rushing the paperwork to send the file to the prosecutor tomorrow morning." "Are you going to close the case? Doesn't that CCTV footage seem strange to you?" I asked, and pressed the issue. Lara's eyes lit up, as if she had been waiting for that question. "Yes, very strange. I've watched it and replayed it in my head. The footage cuts off abnormally just before she runs out. It's unnatural. Like an ad was edited out clumsily. And more importantly, the timestamp on the video has an illogical jump. A few seconds, perhaps dozens of seconds, have disappeared." I knew I had found the right person. This woman not only had compassion, she also possessed the keen eye of a good investigator. "Can you check the original file of that video?" Lara hesitated. She pressed her lips together. "That is very risky, ma'am. The original evidence file is kept on the central server. Only inspector-level command and above or the technical department have access. I would have to do it without Detective Brooks knowing. If I'm discovered, I could lose everything." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I understand the risk, but if we do nothing, an innocent girl will have her whole life ruined. Sometimes justice asks us to take unconventional paths. Officer Jones." Lara remained silent for a long time. Her gaze was lost in the cup of cold coffee. Finally, she looked up with determination. "All right, I'll try." 2 days later, the 2 longest days of my life, a call rang from a public phone. It was Lara. Her voice was tense and fast. She told me her audacious plan. She had claimed that her work computer was malfunctioning and that she couldn't read the format of the video file for the case. That excuse allowed her to approach the technical forensics department. While a technician helped her fix the machine, she struck up a conversation with him and asked him to open the original file of Emily's case to check if her computer could read it. The result confirmed our suspicions. The meticulous technician, unaware of the plot, confirmed that the video file's metadata had been altered. Specifically, a 48-second fragment at the beginning had been brutally cut. And here was the most conclusive proof. The file's edit history was clearly recorded. Undeniable. The account used to perform that edit was Detective Michael Brooks's, and the manipulation had been done just minutes before the tape was shown to me. "We have proof that he did it, ma'am," Lara concluded over the phone. I could hear her heart pounding in her breathing. "But this is a double-edged sword. If we present it now, he will deny everything, say his account was hacked, and I will be fired, even prosecuted for improper access to the file. We cannot confront him head-on. We need something else. External proof. Something totally objective that he cannot deny or control." I understood Lara's idea. We had proof of the cover-up, but we still lacked evidence of the initial crime. A piece of evidence that the hands of Michael Brooks and Robert could not reach. While Lara had to move cautiously in the darkness of the police station, I knew I had to start my own battle in the public light. Thanks to my former reputation and a couple of calls to friends to whom I owed favors, Emily was released on bail. But it was a freedom with chains. The girl remained under surveillance, prohibited from leaving the city, and obligated to check in weekly. She moved in with me in my quiet little house. But the tranquility of the house could not calm the storm in the girl's heart. Emily spent the whole day in silence, like a shadow. Her smile disappeared, and that clear look she once had now seemed lost, distant. She didn't cry, but her silence hurt more than any scream. I couldn't stand idly by watching my granddaughter fade away. I had to find the proof Lara spoke of, external proof, an objective truth. I decided to return to my daughter's neighborhood, the place where the nightmare began. I went door to door, hoping to find a witness, a security camera, anything. But the search soon became a bitter disappointment. The first door was opened by a middle-aged man. He just shook his head and said he hadn't seen or heard anything, then closed it immediately. At the second house, a young woman, as soon as she heard the words police and Robert, shut the door in my face, as if I were a disease. Some people were kind, offered me a glass of water, listened to my story with pity in their eyes. But when I asked if they would be willing to testify, everyone refused. They were afraid of Robert, afraid of the trouble he could cause. They chose the safety of silence. As the sun began to set toward the west, staining the rooftops red, I was about to give up. I stood in front of the last house, right across from Sarah's, my heart full of helplessness. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The one who opened was an elderly lady with neatly gathered white hair, a kind face, and sweet wrinkles around her eyes. Mrs. Davis. I remembered seeing her a few times when I visited my daughter. She recognized me right away. "Miss Miller, please come in. You look tired." She led me into her warm living room and prepared a cup of chamomile tea that smelled delicious. Without me saying anything, she spoke first, with a voice full of compassion. "I heard what happened with little Emily. It's terrible. I'm very fond of her. She's a good girl. And honestly, I never liked that Robert guy. He seems as slippery as an eel." Her words were like warm water on my frozen heart. I told her the whole situation, hiding nothing, and asked if she had any cameras or had seen anything strange the night of the incident. Mrs. Davis sadly shook her head. "Oh, what a shame. My house camera broke last week, and my husband hasn't wanted to call the technician yet." I felt my spirit sink. The last hope was fading. I took a sip of tea, but the bitter taste inside me was much stronger. Then, Mrs. Davis narrowed her eyes, as if trying to remember something. "Ah, wait." She patted herself on the forehead. "It wasn't that night. It was a few days before. Last week, my husband and I had a big argument about the porch roof. He wanted red shingles, and I preferred grey ones, like the ones on Sarah's house. To prove to him that I was right, I recorded a small video of their roof with my cell phone to show him. I remember it was a weekday, and only that Robert and little Emily were there. Do you want to see it? Maybe it won't help much, but a spark of hope, however small, was worth it." "Yes, please. Can I see it?" Mrs. Davis searched her purse, pulled out her phone, and after a few seconds, handed it to me. "Here it is." The video started. The image trembled with the unsteady hand of an amateur. At first, you only saw a piece of blue sky and the grey shingles in the foreground. I almost sighed with disappointment. Just as she had said, it didn't seem to help at all. But then, when the camera lowered slightly to show the entire roof, something was reflected in the second-floor window of Sarah's house, Emily's room window. My heart began to pound heavily. The image wasn't clear. It was distorted by the reflection, but you could just make it out. Emily was on the small balcony outside her room, watering the petunias she loved so much. And then Robert came out of the room. In the reflection of the glass, I saw him stand behind her, too close, invading her space. He leaned in and whispered something in her ear. His hand did not rest on her shoulder in an affectionate way, as a father would, but slowly slipped down the girl's arm, a gesture loaded with possession and malice. And then I clearly saw Emily's reaction through the glass. The girl froze, her shoulders hunched defensively. She tried to slip away, but Robert's hand firmly gripped her arm. The girl's entire body, even if only a blurry, reflected image, screamed fear and mute resistance. My hand trembled, holding the phone. This was it. This was the proof Lara said we needed. A completely accidental, totally objective, and irreversible piece of evidence. It didn't show the attack in the room that night, but it completely destroyed the image of the exemplary stepfather Robert had painstakingly built. It proved his pattern of harassment. It proved that Emily's fear was real. I looked up at Mrs. Davis, and the tears I had held back for days suddenly burst forth, unstoppable. "Ma'am," my voice broke, "you just saved my granddaughter." As I left Mrs. Davis's house, I felt recharged with energy. The video on her phone was not just evidence, it was a weapon, the sword we needed to cut through that web of lies. I immediately went to a nearby payphone and called Lara. I didn't dare use my own phone, just in case. "I have it," I said as soon as Lara answered, my voice trembling with emotion. "A video, not direct, but enough to show he's a predator." On the other end, there was a second of silence. I heard Lara's sigh of relief. "Please don't send it over the internet. Don't tell anyone else. We have to meet." We couldn't meet at the Sacramento police station. That place was now a trap. A coffee shop wasn't safe either. Finally, we decided to meet in a neutral, safer place. The office of a lawyer I fully trusted, an old friend named Richard Miller. Richard was not only a good lawyer, he was also a man of integrity, the kind I knew would never turn his back on justice. I called him, and without hesitation, he agreed to help us without demanding any payment. In Richard's office, under a warm light and among piles of legal files, we laid out all our cards. Lara, simply dressed so as not to be recognized, clearly and professionally explained her finding, how the CCTV had been edited, how the metadata had been altered, and, most importantly, that the perpetrator of those acts was Detective Michael Brooks. Then it was my turn. I handed Mrs. Davis's phone to Richard. He received it, put on his glasses, and watched the video. He didn't watch it just once. He played the blurred, reflected image in that window over and over again, dozens of times. The more he watched, the more his face hardened. His usual kindness had disappeared, replaced by the seriousness of a lawyer facing a grave case. Finally, he placed the phone on the table. "This is enough," he said firmly. "We have what we need." Richard explained the next strategy. If we presented this evidence at the Sacramento police station, the most likely outcome was that it would mysteriously disappear or be indefinitely delayed by administrative procedures. Michael Brooks and those protecting him would do everything possible to bury it. He proposed a bolder plan, a direct strike at the heart of the system. "We are going to escalate. We will go directly to the State District Attorney's office to speak face-to-face with District Attorney Eleanor Jones." She was known to be a woman as tough as steel, who would not tolerate any form of corruption in the sector. She hated with all her being those who stained the work of others. It turned out Richard had already worked with Ms. Jones and knew her character well. He used his contacts to secure an urgent appointment the following morning. The next day, we went together to the imposing district attorney's building, Lara, Richard, and I. Mrs. Davis, After Richard convinced her of the importance of her testimony and assured her of full protection, also had the courage to accompany us as a witness. She told me, "I am doing this for Emily and for all the other children." District Attorney Eleanor Jones was a powerful woman with a sharp gaze and a presence that commanded respect. She wasted no time on unnecessary greetings. She reviewed all the evidence we brought. She listened in silence to Lara's detailed testimony on how she discovered the video had been edited. She watched Mrs. Davis's recording several times, not missing a single detail. When we finished, she only said, "Wait here." 15 minutes later, she returned and gave a series of firm orders. Seal all files on Emily's case at the Sacramento Police Department. Open an urgent internal investigation against Detective Michael Brooks for obstruction of justice and manipulation of evidence. That same afternoon, a special team from the district attorney's office burst into the Sacramento police station by surprise, causing a huge stir. Everything happened so fast, so suddenly, that no one had time to react. Michael Brooks was immediately called in for questioning without even understanding what was happening. When the district attorney's technical team presented the irrefutable proof that his account had been used to cut the security video, with the exact time and IP address, Michael went silent, sweat running down his forehead. He tried to blame a system error. Then he said, someone hacked his account. But the district attorney's forensic computer specialists debunked those lies in seconds. Finally, faced with the possibility of being charged with obstruction of justice and complicity in an assault, with a jail sentence looming, Michael broke down. He confessed everything. Based on his statement, and by direct order of Ms. Jones, Robert was arrested in his elegant financial advising office. This time, there was no arrogance or victim performance. When the agents put handcuffs on him in front of his employees, he completely lost control. He yelled wildly, "It's all a misunderstanding. They are going to destroy my life because of an insolent brat. You will pay for this." During the subsequent interrogation at the district attorney's office, knowing that Michael had been discovered and told everything, Robert changed strategy. He admitted he had asked Michael for help, saying he was an old drinking buddy who owed him a favor. He tried to place most of the blame on him, hoping it would help reduce his sentence. But it was too late. With Mrs. Davis's video proving the harassment and the 911 recording, authenticated by sound experts, his guilt was undeniable. No one believed a single word from that demon in a man's face again. His theatre play had come to an end. The day of the trial, the atmosphere in the courtroom was dense and tense. It was full of people, from curious journalists to citizens who wanted to see justice. I sat in the front row, next to Emily. She squeezed my hand tightly. Her fingers were cold and trembling. But when I looked at her, I saw that there was no longer fear in her eyes, but determination and a quiet courage. In the back rows, I saw Sarah sitting alone, huddled in a corner. Her face was pale, haggard, her eyes sunken from sleepless nights and the guilt that consumed her. The side door of the room opened. Robert entered, escorted by 2 guards. He was thinner and paler, but still had that defiant stubbornness in his gaze that had defined him until the end. Then came Michael Brooks, in wrinkled civilian clothes, looking like a faded shadow of himself. He didn't dare to look up, only stared at the floor as if wanting to find a hole to crawl into. From the prosecution's side, led by Chief District Attorney Eleanor Jones, a solid and irrefutable case was presented. She didn't use flowery words. She simply placed the truth on the scale of justice. First, Mrs. Davis's video was projected onto the large screen. Although the image was a bit blurry, Robert's actions were undeniable. The entire room fell silent, seeing how he positioned himself behind Emily, his hand sliding down the girl's arm, and her reaction of fear. The farce of the exemplary stepfather collapsed from the first piece of evidence. Next, the 911 call recording was played. Emily's voice, full of panic and desperation, resonated throughout the place. But it was Robert's phrase, "Shut up, brat. If you talk, your mother is going to think you provoked me. Don't forget. She only trusts me." That made everyone present shudder. A murmur of indignation ran through the room, and the judge had to bang the gavel to restore order. Finally, the final blow came. A technical expert from the district attorney's office presented the original, fully restored security camera recording. Everyone held their breath during the 48 seconds of silence that had previously been cut. The video showed Robert looking down the hallway before quietly entering Emily's room and closing the door. 48 seconds passed in silence. 48 seconds in which no one knew what horror occurred behind that door. And then, the door burst open and Emily ran out, terrified, defending herself. Those 48 seconds were the deadly void, the most conclusive proof of Emily's truth and Robert's lie. During the interrogation, Robert continued to deny everything. He repeated over and over that it had only been an exaggerated display of affection from a concerned stepfather, that Emily had misinterpreted his intentions. He acted as if he were the victim of a tragedy, but no one believed him. In contrast, Michael Brooks, when called, confessed all his actions to ask for clemency. His voice was weak, without the slightest trace of the old, proud detective. He admitted to manipulating the recording and directing the investigation to favor Robert. As the trial was about to end, the judge asked me if I wanted to speak as the victim's guardian. I stood up. I did not look at Robert, because to me, he was no more than a demon unworthy of my attention. My gaze turned to Michael Brooks. "I know you, Brooks," I said, my voice firm amid the silence. "I remember when you joined the force, a young man full of ideals. You swore to uphold justice and defend the innocent. But what did you do? You turned justice into a bargaining chip to repay favors. You turned your oath into a cheap joke. Your crime is not only altering evidence, your biggest crime is betraying the public's trust in the uniform you wear. That is unforgivable." Michael lowered his head, his shoulders trembling. He didn't dare to look at me. The jury did not take long to deliberate. The verdict was issued quickly and without doubts. Robert was found guilty of sexual assault on a minor and other related charges, receiving a sentence of 12 years in prison without the right to parole. Michael Brooks was convicted of obstruction of justice and abuse of power, with a sentence of 3 years in prison. He was immediately expelled from the force and lost all his titles and pension for life. When the sound of the judge's gavel marked the end of the trial, I felt a huge weight lift from my shoulders. Emily let out a long sigh, as if she had been holding her breath from the start. As people dispersed, Sarah approached us. She looked lost, soulless. She didn't dare look at Emily. She only looked at me and burst into tears, tears of late repentance. "Mom, I was wrong," she said between sobs. "I am a bad mother. I didn't believe her. I don't deserve to be Emily's mother." I put my hand on her shoulder. The anger in me had already faded. Only weariness and a deep sadness remained. "Yes, you were wrong, Sarah. It was a terrible mistake. But this is not the time to sink into guilt. Fix your mistake. Don't apologize to me. Act. And the person who needs to apologize, the one who must use the rest of her life to show she has changed, is not the mother." I nodded gently toward Emily. My granddaughter was still there, quiet, looking at her mother for the first time after avoiding her eyes for so long. There was something complex in her gaze, a mixture of deep pain that had not yet healed, and a very weak spark of hope, a silent question about whether her mother had truly changed. I knew the path to healing for both of them would be long and full of obstacles. The trial ended. Justice was served. But Emily's real struggle was just beginning. The sentences handed down could not erase the scars engraved on her soul. I took her back to my house, a small house with petunias full of flowers in front of the porch, her favorite spot. I hoped that place would become her refuge, a fortress of peace that would protect her from the world. Days later, Sarah called me, her voice trembling. She wanted to clean out Emily's room at the old house and bring her things. I spoke to her calmly, asking her to let Emily decide. Ask her first, Sarah. Don't make any more decisions for her. In the end, Emily only asked me to bring her some clothes and a few school books she had left unfinished. She didn't want to go back to that house, not for a minute. She also didn't want anything from that room, where every object had become saturated with painful memories. In the following days, Emily didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't complain, but her pain was felt in every gesture, in every silence. She startled at the doorbell or the simple sound of my footsteps, slightly louder in the hallway. She also didn't sleep well. Some nights, I heard her murmur, tossing and turning in her sleep, and I would get up quietly to sit by her side until her breathing returned to calm. One day she told me she had dropped all her graphic design and artificial intelligence programming classes. The metal compass, the same one she had used to defend herself from that monster, had become a nightmare, a living reminder of the horror she had lived. The wounds of the body can heal, but those of the soul continue to bleed for much longer. Meanwhile, Sarah awkwardly tried to mend the broken relationship. The first week, she brought an expensive, latest generation laptop, saying it was to compensate her daughter. Emily only said, "Thanks, Mum," and left the box in a corner. There it remained, gathering dust, never opened. The following week, she prepared a dinner full of Emily's favorite dishes, like barbecue ribs, coleslaw, and sweet potato fries. She sat down, ate a few spoonfuls out of obligation, but I could see the effort she made to swallow. The meal passed in a suffocating silence, with the metallic clinking of cutlery as the only sound. In the end, Emily asked permission to go to her room, leaving Sarah alone in front of the cold table. Sarah's visits repeated with the same sad script. She would stand in the living room, trying to talk about trivial things, the weather, her health. Emily, sitting on the porch swing, would look at the petunia flowers, answering barely in monosyllables. Every time Sarah left, I saw her eyes swollen from holding back tears. One night, after another frustrating visit, I didn't let her leave. I sat her down with me on the patio bench. "Do you know why Emily is so distant with you?" I asked her. Sarah finally burst into tears with all the accumulated sorrow. "Because I didn't believe her. Because I made her suffer." "Yes, but it's not just that," I continued, no longer angry, only weary. "It's because you try to buy her forgiveness with things, with meals, with empty words. But trust is not bought, Sarah. It is rebuilt little by little, with actions, with infinite patience, and with proof that you have truly changed from the inside." I told her about the nights Emily had nightmares, about how she startled at noises. "Her wounds are not on the skin for you to put ointment on. They are inside, in her mind, in her dreams. You have to learn to listen to her silence before you expect her to talk to you." My words seemed to awaken something in Sarah. She stopped bringing gifts. The visits became less frequent, more sincere, without pressure, without forcing anything. A month later, she called me to tell me she had sold the old house. "I can't live with those memories anymore, Mum. Every corner reminds me of how blind I was." And then she started to approach her in a different way. Instead of coming to visit, she began writing handwritten letters to Emily. They were short letters, without empty apologies. Instead, she talked about what she was doing. She said she had searched for and joined a support group for families of abuse victims. She spoke of the painful stories she heard from other mothers, women who had also made mistakes like her. She talked about how she was learning to listen, to recognize the signs, no matter how minimal. She never asked Emily to reply. She just came silently, left the letters in my mailbox, and left. One afternoon, I saw Emily carefully walk out to the mailbox, take the pile of letters, and lock herself in her room. That night, for the first time in many weeks, I heard her cry, but it wasn't the desperate crying of nightmares. It was a contained cry, a cry of release, as if the ice in her heart was finally beginning to melt. 6 months passed slowly, steadily, like a calm river reforming the banks that had been broken. The ice in Emily's heart began to melt thanks to her mother's letters. The silence in my house was slowly filled with small conversations, soft music, and sometimes a smile. It wasn't yet the radiant, free smile of the girl she had been. It was still shy, with a hint of sadness. But to me, it was worth more than anything. One morning in late spring, while having tea on the porch and reading the newspaper, a large headline on the front page jumped out at me, and I almost dropped the cup. Police announce the Miller Protocol, new operating procedure following case that moved the nation. My name, printed in large letters in the newspaper. I kept reading, my heart racing. The article quoted Chief District Attorney Eleanor Jones's words. The case of little Emily Taylor showed us the deadly voids in the system, where negligence and abuse of power can destroy justice. This new protocol is named after former Detective Elizabeth Miller, a legend on the force, who showed us that justice must be pursued to the end, even if it means confronting one's own colleagues. I read the points of the new protocol carefully. They weren't meaningless, pretty phrases. They were real changes, born from the hell we had lived through. All CCTV recordings and the original audio of a scene must be automatically copied to an independent cloud server of the district attorney's office as soon as they are recorded, without any person being able to modify or delete them. The victim or their legal representative has the right to request a third party to analyze the digital evidence. And most importantly, all complaints of police misconduct during an investigation will be handled by an independent unit of the district attorney's office and not by the police's own internal division investigating itself. Tears streamed slowly down my cheeks. They were not tears of pride, but of relief. Our struggle not only brought justice for Emily, it also left a legacy, a shield to protect other victims in the future. Shortly after, Lara Jones called me. Her voice was full of enthusiasm. She happily told me that she had been promoted to lieutenant and would now lead a new team specializing in sensitive cases related to women and children. I learned from you that sometimes the uniform only makes sense when we dare to stand on the side of the most vulnerable, ma'am, she told me sincerely. Thank you for teaching me that. New seeds of life sprouted from the ashes of the system. Sarah was now a key volunteer at the victim support center she had once attended. She no longer just answered calls. She also dared to give talks, sharing her own story of error. She helped other parents recognize the signs, no matter how small, when their children were being abused, and taught them the hard lesson she had to pay to learn about blind trust. And Emily, my beloved granddaughter. The girl had received the acceptance letter from the law school at the prestigious State University of California. One night, she sat next to me and said firmly, "Grandma, I want to be a prosecutor, like Ms. Eleanor Jones. I want to use the law to protect people who cannot speak up for themselves." On the day of Emily's first day of classes, Sarah showed up. She didn't come alone. In her hands, she carried a potted petunia, small, with pink and purple flowers that were just beginning to open. "I know you don't want to go back to the old house," Sarah said, her voice trembling with emotion and fear. "But your father, Jack, and I planted that petunia a long time ago. I took a cutting. I want you to take a beautiful part of his memory with you, on this new path." Emily remained silent. She stared at the pot and then looked up at her mother. There was still pain in her eyes, but the wall of ice seemed to have melted. For the first time in 6 months, she stepped forward and hugged her mother. It was a brief hug, still somewhat awkward and distant, but it was enough to break the silence and the void that had separated mother and daughter for half a year. I watched the scene from afar, my heart relieved. The wound was still there, deep, and perhaps it would never fully heal. But a new life was beginning to sprout. That afternoon, after returning from the university, Emily and I sat on the porch again, as usual. She was focused, reading a thick law book. Suddenly she lifted her head, looked at me, and smiled. This time, it was a true, complete, luminous smile that reached the depths of her eyes. "Grandma," she said clearly, "thank you for everything." I didn't answer anything. I just squeezed her hand, a hand that no longer trembled. Outside, the petunia on the roof was blooming, bright under the warm afternoon sun. The battle was over, and a new stage, a new chapter of life was about to begin. The story you have just heard has changed names and places to protect the identity of those who participated in it. We do not tell this to judge, but with the hope that someone listens and pauses to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I truly wonder. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to be silent to maintain peace? Or would you have the courage to face everything and reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story can be a candle that lights the way for another person. God always blesses, and I am sure that courage will lead us to better days. For now, on the final screen, I will leave you two of the channel's most beloved stories. I think they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.